You mentioned that pedal from Lucky, the big unit, the large black unit with lots of knobs on and things. What is that pedal? If you could maybe talk through it a bit.
Yeah, so Lucky made the demonic machine. We had a conversation. I may even have sent this to you. I found a picture of a big modular synth, and it had all these knobs and switches on it. And it was like an analog modular synth. And I said, I want a fuzz that's that. Like, I know what that is. That's a modular synth with VCAs and all this stuff, and it's useless for me. I want a fuzz that's that complex. And I started shopping the idea to different builders. And people expressed some interest, but it was still kind of a pretty ethereal concept. It wasn't really concrete yet. But I was talking to Lucky, and I said, what if we made a flagship art piece called The Demonic Machine? And it was just the name at that point. And then I kind of said, well, what if it's the ultimate fuzz? And so it's got a bunch of features. So we talked back and forth, and they came back and said, originally it was going to have like 5 fuzzes in it, and it was going to have even more stuff. And I was like, well, because I was pretty concerned, because even some of my really experienced builders, the more complex you make something, the more likelihood that something is, there's going to be a noise issue, there's going to be a power issue or a phase. There's going to be something that's hard to troubleshoot the more complex you make something. And I was really worried about ground loop noise and power requirements, and just the potential durability, you know, as it's getting shipped, the way that shipping is handled these days. I was very concerned. So anyway, the final design, so I'll talk about what it actually is now, is it starts with a 3-band modded muff. So it's got bass, middle, treble, gain, and volume. That's the 5 knobs that come from the middle to the right. That's what all those knobs do. And then there's 2 switches. I think there's a mid-cut scoop, and then it's like a Cornish version, Pete Cornish, shout out, UK. There's like a Cornish version of the muff, and then another version, because it's like 2 separate muff circuits in the clipping stage. I can't remember if one's germanium or one's silicone. I can't remember exactly what that does. But basically there's 2 different muffs with a mid-cut scoop or boost and 3-band EQ. And then the next thing is a green ringer. So the octave up tentacle green ringer circuit, which sounds very sweet and musical. Have you ever played a green ringer? Like a tentacle?
I haven't, no.
From EQD or something? It doesn't sound like a Fox tone or like some of the other or Octavia. It doesn't sound screechy and like kind of overpowering. It's very sweet and mellow. So it almost sounds like feedback when you're playing up high. So that's the next circuit over. And then there's a master mute that turns everything off completely. That's the middle switch. The next left switch is a stutter switch, which I think is right before the master volume. So there's a big master volume. It's kind of, you might miss it when you first see it, but there's a Bourne's console slider that is a master volume that runs right across the middle. So I've
seen something running across the middle. I hadn't realized what it was from the images, but yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
So it's a master volume for the entire unit. So every single stage, you have a master volume. So you could really crank everything and then dial back the master if it's too overpowering.
Wow.
But it's a console slider, like from Bourne's. Like, it's actually a really nice, that was an expensive piece. But so there's a stutter switch, and then the last stage is the tube stage, which is a plate starved, I think it's like a valve caster 12AX7 circuit. So that can run off of, the whole thing can run off normal 9-volt. And I have it attached to my 500 milliamp high current output on my brick. But I almost wonder if it could run at 100 milliamps or less, because there's actually not very much current drop, even with everything on with a real tube. And then, so yeah, the tube stage has master volume and a gain. And it's not super loud, but this combination of the muff and the tube stage, or the ringer and the tube stage, because it has a nice drive sound to it. It almost sounds like a fuzz on its own. But just the combination of all 3 circuits together, so the muff, the ringer, and the valve stage, it makes one big sound. And it's funny because it's not very noisy even with everything on.
Mm.
Like I was worried about microphonics from a tube. I didn't have to worry. It worked out just fine.
Brilliant.
But yeah, I was really, yeah, because it was an expensive project and it took a lot of doing. And I was really surprised Lucky was able to pull it off, but they came through.
Excellent.
And it shipped fine and it worked when it fired it up. I think I had one problem, like the tube had gotten slightly knocked loose and I seated it. That was it. That was the only thing that was wrong. But that enclosure is massive. I should have grabbed it to show it.
Don't worry about it.
But it's so big. It's 2 foot by 2 foot, and then
is
it's
it
like
really?
This tall. Oh, it's massive. Yeah.
Oh wow! I didn't realize it was that big.
Yeah,
Wow.
those are jumbo claw knobs. You know, those are like 2-inch square, and there's 7 of them just like scattered loosely. Yeah, it's a huge unit. It easily eclipses every single pedal in my collection as far as size.
So you're going to need a pedal board for that pedal.
Yeah, ideally, and all my builders are so busy. It's been great. So I make them demos and sales are up, but they're too busy for my weird mad science projects. And I don't have unlimited resource to just commission big projects all the time. But ideally, I would have all my builders, because I work for about 5 or 6 people now.
Yeah.
I'd have all of them make something comparable.
Yeah. Well, it's making something different, isn't it? Coming up with something different and unique. That's what we want.
Yeah, because I really was inspired by the Earthquaker Life pedal. When I was right around the time I was getting into pedals, I kept hearing about this thing that they sold out instantly and they were reselling it for $1,000. And I was like, what is this thing? So this is kind of an answer to that, but it's instead of being a modified Rat, it's a muff circuit and it has a lot more controls. But what's funny about that pedal is that it's very refined sounding. Yeah. It has like a smoothness to it when you start, like it has a smooth complexity to it rather than just a rawness. I think when you have less controls on a fuzz, you get a lot more raw sound, which is fun, but you can't really shape it at all. With this, it's very refined and has a certain smoothness to it. So, but yeah, I love that project. I wish I could do more like that, but they are quite expensive. Yeah. So I saw the build breakdown sheet, and so Lucky had said to make another one, they would have to charge $666. But it's not a joke for there to be profit in that design. So I'll just break this down. So just the case and shipping and taxes. So none of the components other than the case and the shipping and the taxes on the parts was about $200. Just to get it to my house was $50. And that's from California to Oregon, which isn't that far. So it's a very cost prohibitive thing to mass produce, but there has been a lot of interest in kind of components of it. Like if we were to break out just the muff part and do something with that, or like a muff with the ringer, which is really close to what the EQD pedal is.
Well, very often, you know, building something like that is very good for, I mean, it's great for marketing because it creates so much interest that all the other products and pedals, you know, sell on the back of it, don't they? It's even though you create something that may not be too user friendly or, you know, financially viable, it helps a business at the end of the day, doesn't it?
Yeah, I made the comparison early on as I was kind of talking about my strategy, because I'm about to shoot a big video for it and try and promote it. So Lucky's best pedal is the Electric Scream, the best seller, and it's one of the most unique designs that they make. Lucky did a really good job with that because most treble boosters are very top-endy, kind of high mid, a little screechy. This has a lot more mid-range and gain in it. So it's almost like a tube screamer alternative without being as nasally, but for a really good price shipped. And I don't even have the new one that lights up. So Lucky made one that I think the pot is RGB and it shines through a clear knob. So it's quite good. So my goal is going to be I'll start the demo with about a minute of really good sounds and kind of it'll be like kind of walking through each of the circuits, and then put a little plug in for the electric screen pedal, then continue the demo. And I'll make like a 2-3 minute polished thing that'll be really good for sharing. But the comparison I made is when you go to a car dealership, they have, you know, the convertible sports car out there in the front, and you ooh and ah over, or it's your Mercedes G-Wagon or your Ferrari or Lambo or something just outrageous that's not for the everyday person. But because they have that out in front and everyone wants to look at it and maybe test drive it, they can sell minivans and station wagons in the back.
Absolutely. That's what it's about.
And you coming from marketing and sales, you know, you got to grab them with something real splashy, and then they're like, well, I can't afford that, but what can I afford?
Yeah.
Lucky makes a lot of stuff that's super affordable.
Yeah, well, it's creating that interest, and the industry needs something different, something new, you know.